My daughter called me at 2 in the morning to tell me she was cold, and I sat straight up in bed before I remembered that I'd buried her the spring before last. The phone on my nightstand is an old thing. A beige cordless my late wife bought at a drugstore years ago, and it has a ring like a dentist's drill. It went off in the dark, and I grabbed it the way you grab anything that wakes you when you're 68 and live alone. My first thought was the hospital. My second thought was nothing at all, because the voice on the line stopped every thought I had. Dad, please open the door. It's freezing out here. I want to tell you what that did to me, but I'm not sure there are words for it. You ever hear a song you haven't heard since you were a kid, and your whole body remembers it before your mind catches up? It was like that, except it was my daughter's voice. And my daughter had been dead for 3 years. I'm grateful you're here with me tonight. Before I go on, I want you to do something. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. If it's the middle of the night and the house is quiet around you, then you already understand a little of how I felt. You're braver than I was that night, sitting there in the dark. "Who is this?" I said. My voice came out wrong, thin and cracked, like a man much older than me. "It's me, Dad. It's Delia." A pause. "Wind, maybe rain." Then, softer, "Remember how you used to say the cold can't find you if you keep moving? You used to make me march around the kitchen." I felt the bottom go out of the bed. My wife and I, Eileen, we used to do that with Delia when the furnace gave out, which in a Minnesota January was about once a winter. March around the kitchen, stomp your feet, sing whatever came into your head. I never told anybody that. It was just ours. It was a small, dumb thing that belonged to a family that didn't exist anymore. "My daughter passed away," I said. 3 years ago. I don't know who you are, but this is a cruel thing to do to an old man." "Dad." Just my name, the way she said it. "The blue mug. The one with the chip in the handle that you wouldn't throw out. You said throwing out a mug just because it's broken is no way to treat something that served you well." I put the phone down on the blanket and pressed both hands flat against my face. I could feel my heart going in my throat. Nobody knew about the mug. It was still in my cupboard. I picked the phone back up. "Where are you?" I whispered. "At the front door. Please, Dad. I can't stay out here." And then the line went dead. I sat there a long while. The house sticked the way old houses do in the cold. Finally, I got up, found my slippers by feel, and went down the hallway, and every floorboard I knew by heart for 40 years sounded like a stranger walking behind me. The front door has a little window in it, frosted glass. I leaned in close. There was a shape out there on the porch under the bulb. A woman, dark hair stuck to her face with rain that was halfway to snow. Gray coat. She turned toward the glass, and for 1 second, one terrible second, I knew it was my girl. I undid the deadbolt with hands that wouldn't hold still and pulled the door open into a gust of wet, cold air. There was nobody there, just the empty porch, the yard going down to the road, the Petersons' light across the way, and the snow starting to come down sideways. I stepped out in my slippers, and the cold bit through right away, and that's when I saw them on the floorboards. Wet footprints, bare feet, narrow, a woman's, leading up to the door and stopping, like whoever made them had stood there a good long while in the freezing rain. I didn't sleep again. I sat in the kitchen with the lights on and the coffee maker running until the gray came up over the yard, and I told myself a dozen reasonable things. Dream. Phone scam. Some sick prank. But I'd seen the footprints, and footprints don't come from a dream. The man who showed up at noon made everything worse, though I didn't know yet that he was the reason for any of it. My son-in-law drove a German car that didn't make a sound coming up the drive. He let himself in with the key he still had, the way he always did, because asking would have meant I might say no. My daughter's husband, Gideon, a financial planner, the kind with a corner office downtown and a wall of framed certificates, the kind people in our town trusted with their retirement because you wore good shoes and remembered your kids' names. I'd walked Delia down the aisle to him 8 years before. I'd thought of him as a son once. I'd been a fool. "Russ," he said, like we were friends, He set a bag of groceries on my counter that I hadn't asked for. "You look like hell. The Petersons said your lights were on all night. Couldn't sleep." He studied me. He had a way of looking at you like you were a column of numbers that didn't add up. "Are you taking the pills the doctor gave you? For the nerves?" "I don't need pills." "Russ," he sat down across from me without being asked, "you're alone out here. You're getting up there." It's normal for the mind to start playing tricks, especially with the grief. You never really dealt with losing her, you know that. My mind isn't playing tricks. Something moved behind his eyes, just a flicker, there and gone. And then the warm, concerned look came back over it like a coat of paint. "Of course not," he said. "I'm only worried. You're the only family I've got left now." He let her name sit there in the air, unspoken. "Why don't you come in, sit down with me one afternoon? I know a good doctor. We could get you evaluated, just to be safe. Make sure you're protected." Protected. I didn't like the word. I didn't like the way his hand came down on my shoulder, firm, the way you'd hold something you didn't want getting away. "I'll think about it," I said, because I wanted him gone. "Good." The smile came back full. "I'll check in this week." I watched that quiet car back out of my drive and roar off down the road, and the house felt colder after he left than it had with the door open to the snow. And I sat there and I thought, why is he so set on telling me I'm losing my mind? Why now? That afternoon I cleaned, mostly to keep my hands busy. I'm a woodworker by trade, retired off the maintenance crew at the high school, and I keep my house squared away out of habit. But there was a corner of my bedroom I hadn't touched since the funeral, where I'd put the few things of Delia's I couldn't part with. A box of her school stuff, and a small cedar jewelry box I'd made her for her 16th birthday, with a false bottom I'd cut myself, a little secret drawer I'd been proud of. She used to hide her allowance in it. She thought I didn't know. I picked it up to dust it, and it rattled wrong. I pressed the spot on the underside where the false bottom releases, the way I'd shown her 30 years before, and it dropped open into my palm. Inside was a folded sheet of notebook paper and a little black thumb drive, the kind you'd buy at an office store. The paper had my name on the outside in her handwriting. My hands started to shake before I even opened it. She dated it 3 weeks before she died. "Dad," she wrote, "if you found this, it's because I finally told you where to look, or because something happened to me. I hope it's the first one. I'm scared to say this out loud because Gideon makes me feel crazy every time I try. He's taking money. Not his, mine, the trust Mom left me and the money from the house. He thinks I don't see it, but I've been keeping copies. When I ask about it, he turns it around, says I'm imagining things, says I'm getting paranoid just like you got after Mom died. He started saying that a lot. That I'm like you. He says it like it's a sickness. Dad, I think if I try to leave, he'll find a way to make everyone believe I'm the one who's unwell. He's good at that. People believe him. I'm putting copies of everything I can find on this drive. If you're reading this, please don't believe what he tells you about me. Whatever he says happened, don't believe it." I sat down on the floor with my back against the bed and I couldn't get a full breath. Because I remembered, 3 years ago, before any of this, she'd called me one night and tried to tell me she wasn't happy, that something was wrong, and I told her marriage is hard, told her to give it time, told her a good man like Gideon was worth working at. I'd sent my own girl back into that house with a pat on the head. I didn't know how to read a thumb drive, but I knew a young man who would. His name is Caleb, and he'd been a scrawny kid in my shop class 15 years back, all elbows and bad attitude, and I'd kept him after school more than once until he stopped breaking things and started building them. He'd grown up into a deputy with the county sheriff's office, married, a baby on the way. He still called me Mr. Ainsworth and still stopped by with a six-pack on my birthday. I called him that evening and told him I needed him, and to my everlasting gratitude, he didn't ask why over the phone. He just came. He sat at my kitchen table with his laptop and the drive, while I made coffee I couldn't drink. He's a careful young man. He opened the files one at a time and didn't say anything for a long while, and the longer he was quiet, the worse my stomach got. Mr. Ainsworth, he said finally, these are bank statements. Withdrawals, transfers, out of accounts in her name into something I don't recognize. It's a lot. It's a real lot. He scrolled. And there's a folder of, looks like a journal. She kept a journal. Don't read it out loud, I said. I can't. So I read it myself, leaning over his shoulder. It started ordinary. Then it didn't. He doesn't want me seeing my friends. He went through my phone while I was asleep and got mad I have a passcode. I found a hotel charge, and when I asked, he laughed and said I was unstable and needed help. He says if I ever try to leave him, no one will believe me, that he's a respected man and I'm just a nervous woman with a difficult father. The last entry was 4 days before she died. I'm getting everything copied. I think he knows I know. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident, no matter what they say. The way she died, they called it an accident. She was found in the closed garage of that big house Gideon bought, her car running, the door down, carbon monoxide. The county ruled it accidental, said she must have started the car to warm it up and gotten lightheaded, fallen asleep. There'd been some wine in her system. It made a tidy story. A sad, tidy story. And I believed it because believing the alternative was more than I could carry. Caleb sat back. His jaw was working. An automatic garage door has a safety sensor, he said slowly. A car that's running in a closed garage, the levels build up fast. But most newer cars and a lot of detectors, there's fail-safes. And the ruling assumes she didn't try to get out. But if she was incapacitated first, he stopped himself. I shouldn't speculate. But Mr. Ainsworth is. He tapped the screen. This is motive. He was stealing from her. If she was about to expose him or leave, he loses everything. His license, his clients, the house, all of it. What do we do? I said. We don't tip him off, Caleb said. Men like this, if they think you're looking, they bury everything and they get ahead of the story. We get something solid first. Then I take it to my sergeant. He looked at me steady. Can you act normal around him, like nothing's changed? I'm not a good liar, but I told him I could. It was that night, with Caleb still at my table, that the clock on the stove rolled over to 2, and the phone rang again. We both went still. I walked to it slow and picked it up. Dad. The same voice. Tired. Frightened almost. Listen to me. Go to the Northern Cross home, the old one out by the lake. Look for my name. That's where it started. That's where everything started. Where what started? I said. Delia, who are you? The line died. Caleb was looking at me like I'd seen a ghost, which I suppose I had. Northern Cross, he said. The old children's home? That place has been shut for 30 years. It's where she was born, I said. And the words felt strange even as I said them, because that wasn't right. That wasn't where my Delia was born. And then I remembered, and the floor seemed to tilt under me. No, that's where Eileen and I adopted her. We adopted her, Caleb. Delia was adopted. She was a few weeks old. We never made a secret of it, but it was so long ago, I'd near forgotten there was anything to tell. Caleb's whole face changed. Why, he said quietly, would somebody pretending to be your dead daughter send you to the place she was adopted from? I didn't have an answer, but I knew we were going. The Northern Cross Children's Society used to be a big brick building out on the north end of the lake, the kind of place with too many windows and a circular drive, and now it was mostly boarded and the grounds had gone to scrub. But the records hadn't burned with the institution, the way I'd half feared. They'd been turned over to a regional archive, a county office in a strip mall 2 towns over, and Caleb knew how to ask. He came in his off-duty clothes so it wouldn't look official. I came as a grieving old man wanting his late daughter's birth records, which was true enough. The woman at the desk was about my age, reading glasses on a chain, a sweater with a cat on it. Her name was Agnes, and she'd worked records for 30-some years, first at the home and then at the archive. And when I told her my daughter's name and the year, something passed over her face. She didn't say anything right off. She went to the back and came out with a thick file gone soft and yellow at the edges and laid it on the counter. I turned the pages with Caleb beside me. There was the intake. There was Eileen's name, my name, the date we took our girl home, the spring of a year that felt like another life. And there, on the original record above it, where they'd written down the births that came through the home that week, there was a number that had been scratched out and written over. You could see it plain in the old ink. It had said 2. Somebody had made it say 1. Mrs. Agnes, Caleb said gently, this record's been altered. You can see it. The woman looked at the door, then back at us, and lowered her voice, though there wasn't another soul in the place. I shouldn't tell you this, she said. I held my tongue 30 years, and I always told myself it wasn't my business. But you're her father, and she's gone, God rest her, so I guess it's nobody's business to keep any more. She took a breath. There was a man, a doctor who consulted for the home, ran some kind of study out of a university. He believed you could learn things from babies if you raised them apart. Twins, mostly. He'd have the home place, twins with 2 different families, separate states sometimes, and never tell either family there was another child. He'd check in over the years, take his notes. The families never knew. He called it research. I had to put a hand on the counter. You're telling me my daughter was a twin? There were 2 baby girls came in together that week, Agnes said. Her own eyes were wet now. Identical. Your wife and you took the one. A couple from the next state over took the other, drove a long way for her. I remember because the woman cried, said she'd waited her whole life. The doctor made sure neither family ever found out. He's long dead now. The study got shut down when it came out, years later. But the families, most of them never got told. The children grew up never knowing they had her. She stopped. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The other family, Caleb said. Do you have a name? An address from back then? She shouldn't have. But she wrote it on a slip of paper for me, an old name and an old address, 300 miles south, and I have thought many times since about what kind of mercy it was that she did. I knew then who I'd seen on my porch. Not a ghost. A woman with my daughter's face, who shared it the way only a twin can. We drove down the next morning, Caleb at the wheel of his own truck on his day off, 6 hours through frozen farm country, and I barely spoke. The name on the slip was Lindquist, and the address turned out to be a small house outside a small town, a tidy place with a snow-shoveled walk and a Norwegian flag faded in the front window. An older man was salting the steps when we pulled up. He straightened slow, the way men our age do. Help you? He said. Are you Eric Lindquist? I asked. He said he was. I told him my name and that I needed to talk to him about his daughter, and the color went right out of his face. He called into the house, and a moment later a woman came to the door, white-haired and apron on. And when she saw 2 strangers standing in her cold yard, talking about her girl, her hand went to her mouth. They sat us at the kitchen table, and the woman Solveig made coffee with hands that shook a little, and her husband told the story plain. They couldn't have children of their own. They'd adopted a baby girl from a home up north, paid the fees. A doctor had arranged it private, said it was all above board. They'd named her, raised her, loved her. But she'd always felt out of step in her own life, they said. Always said she felt like a guest in the family. Like a piece of her was somewhere else and she didn't know where. As a grown woman, she'd done one of those mail-away DNA tests, the kind everybody does now, hoping to find some blood relation. And about 2 years ago, the test had finally turned up a close match. A first cousin, somebody told her. And not long after that, she'd packed up and moved north. Said she'd met someone who was helping her sort out where she came from. A counselor of some kind. They hadn't heard from her in weeks, and they'd been sick with worry. What's the man's name? Caleb asked. The one helping her. Solveig went and got a card from a drawer, the kind you'd staple to a business letter, and slid it across the table. It had my son-in-law's name on it. I've done a lot of hard things in my life. I have buried a wife and buried a daughter. but I am not sure anything ever hit me the way that card did, lying there on a stranger's kitchen table. He'd known. He had found her. The DNA matched the daughter's twin had been chasing, the cousin the test turned up. That was Delia, or it was the thread that led to Delia. To him. He'd reeled this poor woman in, fed her some story, and used her. Used her own grief, her whole life's worth of not belonging, and pointed it at me. We have to go home, I told Caleb, right now. We drove back through the dark, and I tried to put it together. He'd killed my daughter for her money, made it look like an accident, sold the county a tidy story, and now he was working on me. The old man alone in his house. The natural next thing to control. Get him declared unfit. Get power of attorney. Force the house and the life insurance and whatever was left into the same hole he'd been pouring Delia's money into. And the woman with Delia's face, the twin, she was the tool. Show up at the old man's door at 2 in the morning, sounding like his dead girl, knowing the secret things only family could know. Things Gideon would have gotten out of Delia over 8 years of marriage. Make the old man see ghosts. Make him doubt his own mind. Then have a respectable man in good shoes step forward and explain to everyone, sadly, that the grief has finally broken him. Halfway home, Caleb's phone rang. He pulled over to take it, listened, and his face went hard. When he hung up, he sat there a second with his hands on the wheel. That was dispatch, he said. Somebody ran a truck off County Road 9 tonight. Hit and run. The truck's mine, Mr. Ainsworth. The one my brother borrowed an hour ago to run to the store. He's banged up, but he'll be okay. They thought it was me driving. He looked at me. Somebody cut the brake line. They wanted whoever was driving that truck dead, and they thought it was me. So he knew. Somehow Gideon knew we were digging. I thought of the spare key, the way he let himself into my house whenever he pleased. He could have been in there. He could have heard the messages on my old answering machine, seen Caleb struck in my drive. He's getting rid of anyone who knows, I said. My voice didn't even shake. I'd gone past the place where it shakes. I came home to a house with the kitchen light on that I hadn't left on. She was sitting at my table. Dark hair, gray coat over the back of the chair, my daughter's face turned to the dark window. For a second, the old fear had me by the throat. Then she turned and I saw the differences. A father sees, the set of the jaw, a little harder, the eyes a little more lost, and I knew. You're not Delia, I said. No. Her voice broke on it. My name's Maeve. I think she was my sister. I think she was my twin, and nobody ever told me. She was crying now, quiet. He told me you gave me away. He said you kept her and got rid of me, that you were my real father and you threw me out like garbage. He said I should come here and make you feel 1/10 of what I felt my whole life. He coached me. He told me what to say. The mug, the kitchen, all of it. I didn't understand why a grown man knew all those little things about you. I told myself he just wanted to help me get closure. She pressed her hands to her face. When I saw you on the porch that first night, you looked so frightened and so kind, and you didn't look like a man who'd ever thrown anybody away. I felt sick about it ever since. A knock came at the front door. I knew who it was before I opened it. He stood on the porch in a pressed shirt at near midnight, calm as Sunday, that briefcase in his hand. Russ, my son-in-law said, stepping past me without an invitation, the way he always did. I've been worried about you. We need to talk. I pointed at the kitchen, at the woman sitting there in my daughter's gray coat. Then talk, I said. Tell me who that is. Tell me how she knows things only my family ever knew. He looked at the kitchen. There was no flicker, no break. Russ, he said, with so much sorrow in it, I almost believed him myself. There's nobody there. You see what I mean now? This is exactly what I've been afraid of. He set the briefcase on my table and clicked it open and laid a sheaf of papers down beside the salt shaker. Power of attorney. My signature line marked with a little plastic flag. For your own protection. So I can take care of things, the house, the accounts, the medical decisions, so you don't have to worry anymore. Sign it and I'll handle everything. And here is the thing I want you to understand, because it is the only part of the story I'm proud of. There was a moment, looking at that empty-seeming chair he swore was empty, when the old fear whispered to me that maybe he was right. Maybe I had imagined her. Maybe I was the broken thing he kept telling everyone I was. He'd spent 3 years teaching me to doubt my own eyes, the same as he taught my daughter. That's the whole trick of a man like that. He doesn't have to be believed. He only has to make you stop believing yourself. But I'd seen the footprints. I'd held the letter she hid in the box I made with my own hands. And a man who has worked with his hands his whole life learns to trust what's real over what's smooth. I'm not signing anything tonight, I said. I need time. Let me sleep on it. His smile thinned out at the edges. Don't wait too long, Russ. You're not safe out here alone. He snapped the case shut. I'll come back. After he left, I stood at the window until the German car was gone, and then I turned to Maeve, who'd heard every word from the kitchen, frozen in the chair he'd sworn was empty. Will you help me stop him? I asked her. She was scared. I could see she was scared all the way down, but she wiped her face and she said yes. I am not a clever man. I never went past the trade school, but I built a lot of things in my life, and the principle is always the same. You measure twice and you make the cut where it counts. I texted him the next afternoon. I've thought it over. Come tonight at 8, I'm ready to sign. Then I called Caleb and told him everything I meant to do, and he didn't like it, and he did it anyway, because that's the kind of young man I taught him to be. He parked his brother's wife's car down the road where it wouldn't be known, and he sat in it with another deputy and a recorder, and he told me the words I needed to get on tape and the words to never say. And I took the little voice recorder Caleb gave me, no bigger than a stick of gum, and I set it inside the cedar jewelry box on my shelf with the false bottom open just enough, my daughter's box, and I thought about her hiding her allowance in it as a girl, and I thought, all right, sweetheart, one more secret in here. The last one. He came at 8:10. Same case, same shirt, same smile that never reached his eyes. Russ, he said, I'm glad you finally come to your senses. I went up to Northern Cross, I said, standing where I planned to stand, near the shelf. I saw the record. I know there were 2 babies. I met the Lindquists. I know about Mavie. The smile held, but something underneath it set like concrete. Old records get messy, he said. Clerical mistakes. You're chasing ghosts, Russ. It's the grief. The garage, I said. The door sensor. The wine you put in her. You knew she was about to leave you and take the proof of what you'd been stealing from her, and you couldn't have that, could you? A man with your reputation. Reputation, he laughed, soft. Listen to yourself. You think anyone will believe a confused old man whose own son-in-law has been begging him to get evaluated? You think they'll take your word over mine? He stepped closer. No, they won't. They never do. My daughter wanted to leave you, I said. She wrote it down. His jaw flexed. And then he said it, low, like he wanted me to hear it and could afford to let me, because who would I tell? She wouldn't listen, he said. I tried to manage her. She kept pushing, so I arranged for the situation to resolve itself. A garage, a running car, a glass of wine she'd already had. The county wrote it up exactly how I needed them to. Tragic accident. Everyone believed it. And after tonight, you'll have signed yourself into my care, all on your own free will, and everyone would believe that too. His hand went into his coat. The front door opened. Maeve stepped in out of the cold, pale as the snow behind her, but standing straight. I'm not Delia, she said to him, and her voice didn't waver. My name is Maeve. She was my sister, and you used me to torture her father. You told me he threw me away. You lied to me about everything. Maeve, he snapped, go home. This doesn't concern. I never knew you existed, I told her, over him, and I meant it with my whole heart. I swear to you I never knew. If I'd known there were 2 of you, I'd have come 300 miles for you, the same as I'd have crawled there for her. What he pulled out of his coat wasn't a gun. It was a little capped syringe, and I understood in a flash what it was for. The same thing the wine had been for. A confused old man overdosing on the nerve pills everyone had heard him refuse to take. He came at me fast for a man in good shoes, and Maeve threw herself between us, and he shoved her hard into the wall, and I did the only thing a man my age can do, which is grab the nearest heavy thing, and the nearest heavy thing was the cast iron skillet still on the stove from supper. And I swung it. He went down, the syringe skittered under the table, and the door came off its hinges. Near enough, with Caleb and the other deputy through it, weapons up, shouting the words they shout, and behind them the cold poured in, and I sat down on the kitchen floor, next to my daughter's twin, and I held her while she shook. And I could not have told you which of us was holding the other up. They had it all. Every word, clean on the recorder, Caleb had set me up with. The confession he was too proud to keep behind his teeth. It took the better part of a year and a trial I'll not soon forget, but they convicted my son-in-law of murdering my daughter, of the embezzlement, of what he tried to do to me, and to the deputy he ran off the road. He's somewhere now where the shirts aren't pressed and there's nobody left to manage. The county reopened her case and changed the word in their file, the same as somebody once changed the word in that old record. They made it say the truth. Maeve and I went slow. Coffee first, in the diner in town, the both of us nervous as cats. Then Sunday dinners. She told me about growing up in that little house with a Norwegian flag, always feeling like the photograph in the family album that didn't match the others. And I told her about her sister, the marching around the kitchen, the chipped blue mug, the box with the false bottom. One cold afternoon we drove out to the cemetery together and stood in front of Delia's stone while the snow came down soft. I wish I'd known her, Maeve said. She'd have loved you so much it'd have scared you, I told her, and it was the truest thing I knew. She lives near me now. Not in the house, she's got her own place across town, a stubborn streak about not being anybody's replacement, which I respect. But she comes for Sunday dinner, and some nights I'll hear from her late, and it's not a ghost on the line. It's just my girl checking that her old man locked his door. I lock it now with a single turn of the key. No more shapes on the porch. No more wet footprints. The clock rolls over to 2 in the morning, and the house is just quiet, the way a house should be. I'll tell you what I learned, because that's the whole reason I sat down to tell you any of this. Trust what's real over what's smooth. There will always be men who are better dressed than you, better spoken than you, more respected than you, and some of them will look you in the eye and tell you that your own 2 eyes are lying. Don't you believe them? Not the credentials, not the corner office, not the kind concerned voice. When something is wrong, you feel it before you can prove it, and that feeling is not weakness, and it is not age, and it is not grief. It's the oldest, truest tool you've got. Listen to the people who love you. My daughter tried to tell me once, and I told her to give it time, and I will carry that to my own grave. A young man I once kept after class risked his life to dig up the truth for me. A frightened woman walked back into the worst night of her life and stood up straight in it. I'd have died alone in that kitchen without them. And don't wait 3 years to ask the question that's eating at you. Don't let anybody, no matter how much you trust them, convince you that love looks like control or that worry is the same as being crazy. If you've got a feeling tonight that something in your life is wrong, sitting there listening to an old man in the dark, then maybe this story found you for a reason. If it moved you, leave a comment and tell me where you listened from. Tell somebody you love that you'd cross 300 miles of frozen road for them, and go check that your door is locked the way I check mine, not because you're afraid anymore, but because the people you'd open it for are finally the only ones still out there in the cold. I think about the chain of it now, the way one thing pulled the next. Gideon didn't wake up a monster. He started with small lies, a number moved here, a withdrawals there, and when my daughter caught him, he learned he could make her doubt what she'd seen with her own eyes. That worked, so he did it bigger. He silenced Delia, sold the county a tidy story, and figured an old man living alone would be the easiest mark of all. Everything he did came from one rotten root, the belief that if he was smooth enough, no one would trust the truth over him. For 3 years he was right. The thing that finally broke him wasn't luck. It was the opposite of everything he was. It was Delia, scared half to death, still sitting down to write the truth and hide it where only her father would find it. It was Maeve, a woman he'd used like a tool, walking back into the worst night of her life to stand up straight and say his name. It was Caleb, who could have looked away and kept his weekend, deciding that what's right is right even when it costs you. None of them were braver than they were frightened. They were just honest when it was hard. And honesty, it turns out, is the one thing a man like Gideon can't counterfeit. I've learned that being a decent person isn't the soft thing people make it out to be. Choosing to do right when lying would be easier, when staying quiet would be safer. That's a kind of muscle, and you only get it by using it. The same goes for thinking clearly. Gideon's whole trade was clouding people's judgment, making them mistrust their own minds, and the only defense I had was learning to tell what's real from what just sounds good. A man in good shoes told me my eyes were lying. The footprints on my porch told me they weren't. I chose to believe the footprints. That choice saved my life. And then there's just not quitting. I'm 68. There were nights in this I wanted to sign whatever he put in front of me and let the dark have me. Because grief is heavy and being doubted is heavier. But I kept measuring, kept asking the next question, kept driving the next 300 miles. You don't have to be strong all at once. You only have to refuse to lay down today and then tomorrow do it again. If you take one thing from a tired old man tonight, take this. Guard your decency, sharpen your judgment, and dig in when the world tells you to fold. Those 3 things won't make you fearless. They'll make you the kind of person the smooth liars can't beat. Delia knew that before I did. I just wish I'd listened in time to tell her so.